I'll go around and stuff. Today I want to talk about some computer stuff. That's why I got that back there. And this is about firmware. You may have heard the term, you may not have heard the term. Okay, what is firmware and why do you have to be aware of it? And I just finished. My wife has a sewing machine, and it's not as a lot of things. It's taken a long time. I remember when the first microprocessor came out in 1970 whatever, and I figured it's interesting. It's gonna try to bleed through my shirt here. How's that? Microprocessor came along, and I could see how they were going to go and everything, but it's taken 50 years to do it. But they are literally in every device. There's only a little computer in there, and it runs a rather small, but it can be complex as well, program. Okay. An example of that, a good example of that is your Apple phones or any kind of current phone. It doesn't have a hard disk in it like you think, a mechanical moving thing. It has a special kind of memory in it that once you set it, it will hold whatever you put in there. It has a long-term, if you will, silicon or whatever the current memory is in there. Okay, so you'll see periodically on your phone it says there's an update available. And what that means is really there is a firmware available for update. The operating systems in your Apple phone and other phones, the operating system that responds to you pushing a icon and it doing something, or making a connection to a Wi-Fi, all that's in the operating system, and it's stored in what's called firmware, and that it doesn't change very often, but it can be changed from the manufacturer. And what's happened over the years, computers have gotten into everything. Give you another good example. You probably are too young for it, but the washing machines you used to buy all had a dial on it where you had to grab this knob. It was always set in the off position. You grabbed the knob and you rotated it around to the kind of wash that you wanted to do. Maybe heavy, or maybe a light wash, or extra spin, or it had settings like that. But what you did is you had to turn a great big knob and you could hear it clicking in there. And what was behind that knob was literally a totally mechanical timer. You were winding up a clock as you did that. And as the clock wound down and moved around to the off position, there would be contacts on the back that it would move into, and for example, start a pump up and pump all the water out, or move a little farther and it would spray water in there. Move a little farther and it would turn the agitator on, that sort of thing. Well, that's all been replaced by a computer board. You don't have mechanical kind of switches in your washing machine anymore. You have a computer in there, and it takes instructions from whatever the dial you have on your washing machine you set it to, but it controls when the pump comes on, when water is dispensed, the agitation. On modern ones, it can rotate it one way and rotate it the other, and so on, so on, so on. Okay, that software in there that's on that computer board is stored in what's called firmware. It was not what's called hard logic, and that it would only do exactly what the hard logic told it to do. It was a computer, a general purpose little teeny computer that had code that executed on that microprocessor or mini computer or teeny little computer in there. And they make these things at the factory, and software engineers set up the program that says, okay, turn on the pump and turn this off and do this in this sequence. And they sometimes find out that something's not quite right. They did not properly calibrate or think about the motion of the tub as it's got a heavy load in it. It rotates around, and it moves something out of balance and makes something go out of kilter. And you might not want it to wash quite as long as the program originally said. Okay, when you start a wash cycle, you run for 5 minutes, you shut off, or you reverse 5 minutes. Anyway, the manufacturers realized they have a problem, so they made it firmware. And if you had a problem down in your where your laundry room is, and the serviceman might come out and he'll punch a bunch of buttons and find out. He says, well, we've had a firmware update and we need to install the latest firmware update. And that's what he'll do. He'll download it from the website for that particular manufacturer, and, onto a thumb drive usually, but it could be on some other mechanism. And he'll install that firmware on your washing machine. That will supposedly fix the problem that has come up during a normal use. And manufacturers don't have the time or luxury to 100% debug an operational washing machine. Users do strange things that nobody can think about. They put too much in it. They put too much little in it. They put too much detergent in it. They put no detergent in it. They do also sorts of things that the programmers in their wisdom didn't envision happening, and therefore the program they wrote for it didn't account for it. So over time you get repair notices, they get under warranty repairs, which really are just firmware problems. It's not a mechanical problem, it's on that computer board. So firmware is definitely in your washing machine. Now, some manufacturers have a way of updating that firmware besides replacing the whole board. Some do not. In the case of a washing machine I had like 10 years ago, if the firmware was bad, the only way to fix it was to replace the computer board. And you'll sometimes run into that. Someone comes out to fix an appliance you have and they say, well, your computer board is bad. It may not be bad, it needs an update. But the only way you can get an update is to replace the whole computer board. Okay. Lots of stuff have firmware in it. I'll give you another example, and this is why you have to pay attention. I have a Ford 2011, and it has a Microsoft touchscreen. Touchscreens on every car now, but at the time that was relatively, it was still an option. So I have a touchscreen in it, and after a while, I got a notice because I registered the car with Ford. I got a notice from Ford that there was a firmware update available for the Microsoft touchscreen computer. Okay, so they gave me instructions on how to do it. I had to download stuff and put it on the thumb drive, and take it to the car, follow the instructions, and update the firmware on the Microsoft touch screen that did GPS and controls climate and all that stuff. There's a little computer board in there, and it doesn't have a hard drive in it. It's got firmware in it. So you may have a car where it'll come up. You may get it right on the display, or you may get an email from them saying your car needs a firmware update. Now, sometimes they can do it automatically if the device connects to the internet. Most times you cannot. You have to use a regular PC or whatever PC you have. To download what's called a firmware update, you have to put it on a USB thumb drive or something like that. Take it out and follow the instructions that the manufacturer has given you to install that firmware update. More and more, Everything is, if it doesn't already, it will have firmware in it. And that allows the manufacturer to adjust the programming that was initially put in the device that has some sort of problem in the real user world. Too much was stuffed in the washing machine and certain sensors went out of bounds and they didn't know what to do when that happened. Firmware. Firmware is in a lot of stuff. On computers, PC computers, there is in fact firmware in them down at the computer board level. Now that's known as BIOS, Basic Input Output System. And there can be firmware updates to a BIOS. Now, most people don't pay any attention to that. You bought your computer, you've been using it ever since. You don't pay any attention to that sort of stuff. If you were, like you have a, I don't know, let's say a Dell computer. You bought a Dell 2 years ago. It's been working fine, everything's good. Okay, if you were to go to the Dell website and search on your particular model, it under support, it may come up and say that there is a BIOS update for your particular computer. Again, something in the real world in the user hands where it was not properly thought about, or perhaps it was a brand new device that came on the market that you want to plug in to that Dell computer that was manufactured just 2 years ago. But there's something in the BIOS down at the lowest level on that computer board that doesn't support that particular device. It needs just a tweak or two. So there'll be a firmware update to your BIOS, and you'll see it if it's one available. And most people ignore those things and they get along fine. But now and then you'll have some trouble and you won't know why, and nobody else will know why, and you tried reinstalling this and you tried reinstalling that, but you forgot to look at the manufacturer's site to see if in fact there is a BIOS update to the motherboard that's in your computer. And it's highly likely and probable that any computer that's sold retail or otherwise will at some time in its life have a BIOS update. That I can almost 100% guarantee that every PC sitting on a desk somewhere is either had or needs a BIOS update. The manufacturers at the time and the software engineers just could not foresee everything. They got certain things wrong. They were a little too crisp when they decided how memory would work, and it works 99.9% of the time, but now and then it's got a glitch and nobody can seem to find out what it is. They finally track it down. They were a little too tight on their specifications and the firmware at the BIOS level. Okay, firmware's here, firmware's there and everywhere. How do you get notice of it? Hopefully you registered with the manufacturer, and if he has issued a firmware update, he will send you an email and saying there is one. Most devices do not currently directly connect to the internet, so they really don't automatically update firmware for you automatically. Now Apple does. It'll say, you know, it comes up with an update and says, okay, I got an update for you. You want to install it? It's another issue having to do with updates and firmware. Your PC may come up and say, I've got an update to this program. You're running Microsoft Word or their Office suite. You may get a notification that there is an update for that. You should execute it. Now you say, oh no, but it could be spam, it could be a virus. There's ways of checking that. You take a look and see if it really came from Microsoft and not John Smith at Chinese AOL.com or something. But you should do all the updates that you get notice of related to the software you have on your computer, as well as any related to the manufacturer's BIOS board. There are in fact firmware updates to hard drives, believe it or not, there is a little piece of software, there is a little motherboard right on a computer hard drive that periodically they need to update because they found that they were a little too tight on their temperature tolerances, and when the drive gets too hot it can not necessarily find something it's looking for. So they did a firmware update and they changed it and dropped down a little value here or there, and that took care of the problem. There are firmware updates for hard drives. They literally have a little piece of firmware in there that can be changed. On Microsoft now, when you do a Windows update, which you should periodically check and do, and I will show you later how to make sure you do that, most PCs, Windows-based PCs, should be set up to automatically do updates. They go out, they check every so many hours to see if there's an update from something from Microsoft. If it is, they automatically install it, restart your computer, and you're not aware of it. Most computers, probably PC, Windows computers, are set up automatically to do that. They may do it overnight. You're not even aware of it. There are cases where some PCs have been set up to not automatically do updates, so you manually have to go in and check to see if there are updates to your operating system, which is Windows 10 or Windows 8 or 9, 10, 11, whatever it is, or there are available updates to applications like Microsoft Office, or if you have a photo editing program, there might be an update to that. Someplace on the program, give you an example, I have Plex, which is a sort of a file sharing program that I use to move movies around on my network. I have a movie server, and any place in the house I can click on Plex and see all the movies and pick one and watch it. Plex has updates to the software that periodically have to do. Those are not done automatically. I have to go, when I bring up Plex, I have to go and check if there are any updates to that application. And I'd say once, twice, 3, 4 times a year there are updates to that specific application. So when I'm talking about updates here in firmware, I'm talking about PCs, various appliances, your car. Most people allow the dealer or want the dealers to do the update as opposed to you. I remember I got towed one day because my battery died in my car, and it took a while for the tow truck to get there, and he said he'd been busy all day because BMW had their new 7 Series, whatever, brand spanking new 7 Series. After a month or whatever period of time it was, it wouldn't start anymore. The user couldn't start his car. They had to be towed into the dealership, and it turned out to be a firmware problem in the computer and the car. So every one of those computers had to have an update done so the car would start again. That's an example of, in that particular case, the dealer had to do it. Now with BMW, they don't even want you to change a light bulb. They want the dealer to do everything. They don't want you to do that. But a lot of the manufacturers do provide a way for a user to do a firmware update, just like Apple does, updating the operating system on your phone, or an application will send you a notice that there is an update, or when you bring up an application it may say there's an update available. All those sorts of things. You should always keep whatever it is you have up to date as far as you're aware of. Again, most people are not aware their BIOS needs an update, and the only way you're going to find that out is you go to the manufacturer of your particular computer and put the model number in and so on, the serial number, whatever, so they know exactly which computer you have and exactly which motherboard you have. And then they'll know whether there's a BIOS update or some other, like a hard drive update. For a hard drive, they put in your computer. Firmware updates, software updates. Those are all really important. I know most people, it's like, it's hard enough to get the computer to come up and do anything you want, really, anyway, much less worry about updates. But over time, if you don't keep your system up to date, you'll start having various problems of one kind or another. Some of your applications that worked fine 3 days ago or 5 weeks ago might not even run anymore because there was an update to the operating system or there was an update to the application and you didn't see it or know about it and didn't do it. That's enough on updates. I was going to start off on firmware, and I've given you an idea what firmware is, but it's more actually probably more important about app updates, particularly on Windows PC, and I'll do a little clip ad on here to show you basically how you do a update. Make sure you're up to date on your Windows-based PC. So that's section 1. Okay, here I am with my PC, Windows 11 or 10, I don't know, whatever it is. Main screen, it probably looks totally different from yours, but you get the idea. And what I'm going to talk about now is how do you make sure that your Windows PC is up to date with all the correct sort of software it needs. And what you do and how you get to it may be different than what I'm showing you, but nonetheless, what you want to do is to go to PC settings. You'll find it somewhere. You may be able to type it down. If you have this search box, you can type PC settings, and there it says settings, and you can do it open. Okay, and up is going to come the screen, and I'll do system. Let's see, I want here's Windows Update. I saw in this far corner a Windows Update. Here it is right here. Now, it says you're up to date, but it also says there's a cumulative update preview for Windows 11, blah, 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 blah. Now, I had joined, I think, a preview group or something, and apparently it's going to give it to me anyway. So what you normally do is you'll click check for updates, and I'm going to do that, and you'll see that it is now going out and checking for any updates I need. And one of the things that also that you can do is advanced options down here. Receive updates for all Microsoft products. You obviously want that set on if you use Office or any other Microsoft products. Down below here you'll also see it says optional updates. There is one available. If I click cumulative update preview, that's the optional update. I don't have to do it, it's an optional update. And this is a preview of a coming update, but I don't want it to get the previews. They have bugs in them. So I'll stick with the regular update. And I come back up to here, and I'm up here one more time. And it says you're up to date. Now this is a preview, and it is an option for me. If I click download and install, it will in fact do it. And that's what you should do. I'm currently up to date. In fact, I'll do it again. I'm surprised I did not find a security update. I'll talk about that in another video, but this is how under Windows, all Windows versions like 7, 8, 9, 10 should all have under PC settings a check for Windows updates. Okay, and what normally happens is you'll install these updates. It may take a little while, it may take a long time, it depends. And then the computer will restart, and it says do not turn your computer off. It is installing those updates. That's how you do a check on updates for. This is also checking Windows applications, okay? That's all you really need to do. And where I'm back now at my home screen. So that's how you take care of checking for updates, and you do want to install them. Now over here on the far right, you have a notification block. Let's see, this is probably just going to bring it up. Here is a notification block. And you may get notifications of a window update in here. You can control what notifications you get and what notifications you don't. And part of what it just showed me was that Windows had done an automatic scan, and I didn't find any errors. I'm going to talk about that for a second, because a lot of people use McAfee or some other security program for which they pay so much a year or something else. I don't do that. I use what's provided by Microsoft, right as a part of Windows 10 or Windows 11. And what you see I did, I came to Control Panel, and down here somewhere is System and Security. Windows Defender Firewall, it should be Security and Maintenance. If I click on Security and Maintenance, and I look on Security, I can, let's see, View in Windows Security. This is probably going to go show me the firewall stuff. Right, but if I want to do virus and threats, and that's an option over here, what will come up is you can now scan. Microsoft has built into it a virus and threats protection. If anybody knows about viruses, it's going to be Microsoft. They're the operating system manufacturer. If anybody knows about it, it's going to be them. PCs, they've got Windows on more PCs than anything else. So if anybody knows about it, it should be them. So I'm going to rely on them to track all the viruses there are in the world. And one of the things you can do a quick scan. Will just scan some small portion of where viruses most likely have tried to get in, through your email or through a download or something like that. You also have scan options. A quick scan. I will do a quick scan this time, and that is just the area that where most likely threats would come in, where threats are commonly found. And I'll do scan now. This is all part of showing you how to do a make sure your computer, at least Windows application, is up to date. Now I'm showing you sort of a side issue in that I don't use McAfee. I don't use some third-party security program on my computers because I just rely on the Microsoft provided product to do that for me. And periodically I run scans. Now this particular scan is set up to run every so many hours. Anyway, now it is a quick scan because it is only looking in those areas which most likely got a virus into it from your email or from a program you loaded, or a website. When you're visiting websites, it may come in through that way. And that's the sort of area it generally looks like. But there are other options you have available to you under Microsoft Windows Security that would in fact let you set that the computer turns itself off when it comes back up. Before the operating system even engages, it scans the entire hard drive for bad things which are resident but not yet doing anything. It's called an offline scan. McAfee may do it. I don't know. I've never owned McAfee. Never had it. I don't see the sense when Windows is providing it. But anyway, keep your systems up to date. It's relatively easy with PCs to do that. On your car, where it has firmware updates it needs, take it to a dealer. If it's an appliance you have that you do get notifications of, then do what's required. In the case of the sewing machine, I had to download a program. It was in zip format, and then I had to push it off onto a thumb drive, take it to the sewing machine, go to the tools section on the sewing machine, go to the update section on the sewing machine, insert the USB drive, and tell it to do the update. I did successfully. So that's not an atypical, that's a pretty typical way that you do have to install a firmware update on a particular device. Anyway, that's enough for now. I think I've shown you just about everything I can on this. There are other various things you can set up and do. The problem with Windows is it's gotten so complicated over the years. It's really hard to know. There are thousands of settings literally everywhere, and you could set the wrong one and things don't look like you thought they would. I'm back to my home screen. That is Update Windows. It's also a little bit about security. And down here, this little green arrow, Windows Security, no actions required. You may have a McAfee icon down here. I don't. All I have is Windows Security. And it, again, I have it set up so it's automatically checking every so many hours. That's it for now, and I'll add this onto my other piece.